Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Audit Committee of Lunenburg Town Council. And we are having more than our typical one meeting per year these days. And so we are here to be better educated on the auditing process. And glad to see everyone. Welcome to our citizen representative on this committee, Jamie Green, and to the members of council who are joining us and staff. And call for a motion to approve our agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Risser. Is there a seconder for that? The Deputy Mayor seconds. All in favor? And no one is left to oppose, so the motion is carried. And as well, we look to have a motion to approve our minutes of our November 19, 2019 Audit Committee meeting minutes. Could I have a motion for that approval? The Deputy Mayor moving the approval of those minutes. Is there a seconder? Councillor Risser seconds. Any errors or omissions or anything to come from that? No. All in favor then? And the motion is carried and those meeting minutes are approved and part of our official record. So the main purpose for our meeting today is a review of their audit process. And so we are very pleased to have representatives from our auditors, Bellevue Vino Incorporated Chartered Accountants, and to go over our books with us. So I will introduce Paul Bellevue, who I see has joined the meeting and is with us. It's always it's interesting having this kind of meeting virtually via Zoom. So Mr. Bellevue, I will turn the virtual floor over to you and invite you to share your wisdom with us. And I see that the mute is on.
Well,
yes?
I think that they are having some technical difficulties. And
okay.
Heather is working also with Michael Bellevue, just about entry into the meeting. So,
okay.
I don't know if even Paul can unmute at this point.
All right. Is there anything you would want to offer, Lisa, by way of introduction to the material we're going to be going over?
Unfortunately, no. There we go.
Oh, okay.
The gentleman with us that we're looking for.
Sorry about that.
I was going to turn it over to them. So
we've been in the family bubble, so we're okay. We're not breaking any. As far as we know, we're not breaking any rules.
No, I think that's all good.
Yeah.
Good to have you here and nice to have you together.
Okay.
Well, I'll just dive right in.
Please do.
Firstly, I think, and we mentioned, you sit down, it's easier. We had mentioned at last year's audit meeting, but it's important to note that we do have Brennan Bailey, the mayor's son, working here at our firm. He has no involvement with the audit or access to anything regarding the audit. And so we put those pieces in place to remain independent from our perspective, but we just always want to make council and the audit committee aware of that. So running through the meeting for today, we have an agreed upon audit fee for the year at $20,000 plus HST. So that number includes the audit itself, but also, throughout the year, myself, Paul, and our staff are in relatively constant contact with Lisa and Kathleen should questions come up throughout the year. If there's a phone call here and there, those pieces are included in that fee as well. When you would see an extra fee would be something that were probably specifically requested by Lisa or Kathleen or council or the CAO to do something that would be kind of a true separate engagement outside of the realm of the audit. From your guys' perspective, that would probably be something, regarding an HST question. If you're looking for a ruling on those pieces is generally where those would come from. So moving through, just to briefly discuss the audit approach, and we've talked about this in prior years as well, but the audit approach is a risk-based approach. Can everybody hear me fine? Just a hands up. Good. Okay, perfect. So we take a risk-based approach where we evaluate the entity and the town in this case, and we look at areas that, of risk that there may be a chance of material misstatement. And then we kind of focus our audit in those areas that would be of higher risk and higher risk of material misstatement. Generally within the town, you're looking at areas, cash is always a high risk regardless of the entity, because cash can, you can't track cash necessarily. So that's always a high risk area that's reviewed, to give you an example. So as part of the exercise today, we kind of put it back to the audit committee, but is there any specific areas, using the term risk, but to use your own knowledge of the town, that you feel would be areas that we should be focusing on in regards to the audit, not just this year, but going forward? Or it could be a specific thing that's happened throughout the year that you would want to bring to the auditor's attention. So I can kind of open the floor briefly if there's any questions, concerns on that.
Anyone have specific concerns or areas of interest? No, I think we're going to follow your lead then, Mike. Thanks.
Perfect. And perfect. And if something does come up, or after the meeting, if you start thinking about it, please feel free to reach out. As I mentioned during the discussion of the risk of material misstatement. So materiality is a concept used in auditing. Essentially, the simplest form is what amount would affect a decision that you make, or the users of the financial statements, what would affect their decision making in dollars is what we look at. So we have it broken down through the 4 kind of main operating pieces to the town. So for example, last year, the materiality level that was used in the operating fund was $100,000. In water, it was $22,600. In electric, it was $96,000. And in cemetery, it was $3,000. So we generally use those based on a revenue piece. Looking on the concern in the operating fund would mainly be around property taxes. So we kind of use that as our, let's take a percentage of that to a level of comfort that we need that would impact your decision making. And that doesn't mean we're only looking at things, over $100,000 within the town. There's kind of subsets to it that we look at called performance materiality. And then what would be trivial or significant is a much lower number. But the baseline top number would be those. And those can vary each year depending on how revenues change or if operations change. So this year, for the timing of the audit, due to the situation that we're currently in, it's been bumped back. Normally we're in about the second, third week of June is generally when we perform the field work. But with everything going on, we've set a date now of July 6th. Generally we're there for about 2 weeks doing field work. So kind of moving that out, it would probably look like and be safe to assume that we could have finalized statements at a final meeting somewhere, as early as the, late July or early August, with the understanding that, schedules around that time of year are probably difficult, but, we can have everything prepped and ready to go. And if a meeting ends up being a later date, at least, everything will be finished and ready should you be able to meet earlier.
Any financial impact because of COVID or anything, Mike?
Leading into, and I'm jumping around a bit, but as far as the fact that the field work's been pushed back, also an area of focus this year, and probably more so impacting your next year operations, but you will see a note in your financial statements this year, a subsequent event note concerning COVID. As right now, it's probably too early to tell what the impacts of this will be on the town itself, financially, operationally, and all those pieces. for your guys's and in our brief conversations. I think so far collections have been decently strong with regard to everything going on. For main concern would be your electric, and then as property taxes are sent out now, what will be the collection basis on that? So those might be an increased area of focus this year, just concerning everything that's going on. Is there any other pieces that you as audit committee may view as a risk due to the COVID?
Anyone?
I think just the uncertainty, just who knows?
Mhm.
It's all uncertain.
I'm just going to say that, and like you mentioned, the cash being at risk. So we probably have dealt more with cash maybe than with some of our older folks. I probably won't be a significant number when it comes to the final analysis, but I know there have been folks that weren't into the online banking, and checks aren't always easy to come by, and some folks have just been using cash and dropping it in. So that's an unusual, I think, repercussion from the COVID situation.
And the arena, the arena, a lot of your recreation activities, like I know everything more or less shut down the middle of March, and we're dealing with the March year end. So basically it's going to be operations in the 2021 fiscal year that you're going to have more impact on your operations for 2021 than probably on the 2020 reporting.
Right. Yeah, good point.
So moving through quickly, there are a couple requirements of the audit committee that you're required to look at. And so from our management letter last year, just to briefly go over, from your perspective, is you're required to review the remuneration and expenses and the hospitality expenses for the year. So those will have a separate note. They did last year as well. There was a note specifically in the audited financial statements. So it's one piece for the auditor to perform our work, but there is a responsibility on the audit committee as well to review those expenditures. So going forward, just to note. In last year's internal control letter, we mentioned for documentation of control and job procedures for each specific person. So that'll be something this year we'll come back to and discuss with the director of finance and her team to see if there's been progress on that front, or and what has been done. So it's just where we identified it last year. It's something we come back to look at this year. It'll end up in the letter again this year, even if everything's been done, but it would end up in the letter to say everything's been done. We can move on from it. And then there was also one piece last year of requiring to transfer the surplus from the operating fund. Year over year, since I've been involved, the surplus in the operating fund has always been small, $900, $1,000. And getting back to the material piece, from our perspective, that's effectively zero, but a requirement of the financial framework is that amount is transferred to reserves each year. So I know last year was a large amount that went through just because it had built up. There might have been one large year way back, but it had built up over the years. So now I know staff, director of finance and her team are transferring that over. So I think you'll have a transfer of $998 of last year's small surplus to get you back to zero. And that's really the main piece to go over today, to give you an idea of when we expect to perform the audit, a brief discussion concerning our procedures and tasks that we're going to fulfill. I'm happy to answer any questions, comments that you may have.
Floor is open to members of the committee. Anyone have any questions for the Bellevue team?
They're just too good.
Well, we're hoping.
Yeah, it's I'm not too conversant in the figures. I just know that when I review the documents, they all make sense. So I think that's a very positive thing. How they relate one to another, I still sometimes struggle to understand, but certainly have great confidence in your abilities to ensure that we're working as we should be. And of course, we have a good team on staff as well. So.
And I think the other point, I think Michael alluded to it, is we're working with staff to make sure that we're complying with your protocol and you're complying with our protocol for dealing with the issue that we have at hand. And then I think when Michael and I had a conversation with Lisa and Catherine, I think we've got that all figured out. So I think it's going to work quite well. And it's a strange time, but we have to make sure we do what's right.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that very much. It is, and it's been evolving. We're all kind of, all of the municipalities are just, some of them haven't been, the offices have been completely closed, and so everybody's just kind of getting back to their offices, and so how to function in the building and work with the public and folks like yourselves who we depend on has been an interesting process to try to figure that out. The landscape keeps changing, so it makes it all that more challenging. But hopefully for the good, to the good at this point. Yeah. So was there anything else then from our finance team, from Ms. Dagley or Ms. Rayfuse, anything that that you're concerned about or wanted us to be aware of through this process of audit this year?
Sorry, Your Worship. No, there isn't anything else. It's just more, there is now a requirement, to have 2 audit committee meetings a year, and that's why we were having this one pre-audit, just to discuss the audit in advance in case there was any concerns of the committee that needed to be addressed during that field work. But like as the Bellevues have mentioned, we've been discussing health protocols, which is not something we normally discuss before we do field work, but we are working at both of those things, the financial and the health protocols, to carry out the audit for this year. So there's nothing more from us.
Thanks very much. Yeah, everything, life has gotten very complicated for sure. But we're pleased that you're online or set up with a date to get started. I know it'll be good for our staff to be able to hand things over and get the audit completed and work with you to that positive result. But if there isn't anything further, we can conclude the business and adjourn.
I was trying to beat Matt. I'll have to take
Not sure-
second.
I'm
I'll
not
take
sure
second,
which-
I guess.
Okay, thanks. I was going to say I looked down for a split second and there were 2 hands in the air, so it was a toss-up. So moved by Councillor Rissler, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? So the meeting is adjourned. I thank everyone very much for joining us today. Thanks very much to Bellevue Vino for continuing to audit us, and thanks very much to our finance team, and good luck with the process.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Michael.